Yeah.
All right, good morning, everyone. We are going to let people filter in for another couple minutes and then we'll get started. The first wave of people has definitely passed, but we'll just give maybe another 30 seconds or so and then we'll get going. Okay, people will still filter in, but good morning, everyone. My name is Michaela Kukin. I'm a member fulfillment specialist here at WiscNet, and I'm joined by my colleague Ivor and Josh. I want to start off by saying thank you so much for being with us this morning. We're excited to spend some time with you today to chatting about some platform updates. But a few quick housekeeping things first. Today's session is going to be recorded and emailed to all registrants. And we'll be leaving some time at the end for questions. But if you have any, please drop them in the chat. We'll answer them at the end. Or Josh is totally fine with you unmuting and asking your question in the moment. So with that, I'll hand things over to Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. And I wanted to mention, because it is being recorded and posted on YouTube, I'm withholding a tiny bit of proprietary information. So if there's something you want more detail in, feel free to email Michaela or myself afterwards, or reach out to us and we can go into more detail. So here's just a quick agenda overview on what I'll touch base on. Primarily focusing on changes since WiscNet connections from earlier this year. So if you were able to attend our conference, hopefully there's not too much repeat information and there's a lot of new stuff. So team updates. WiscNet has hired a CISO, Jason Downey, and with our secure platform consultants, they now make up the secure platform team. Both of our teams still have overlap and we work closely together, so don't expect any friction moving between our teams or having any support tickets where both of our teams are supporting you. Okay, so we're going to start with the Boreas RFP overview. So Boreas, for those that don't know, is the broadband optical research, education, and sciences network. WiscNet has been a member of Boreas since 2018. It's made up of higher education and not-for-profit networks spanning Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. WiscNet currently uses Boreas to connect our backbone between Minneapolis, Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago with 2 by 100 gigabit per second circuits. Boreas's existing optical network is composed of Infinera DTN and XTCs, and in its current state, it can only provide up to 100 gigabit per second client circuits. Boreas is currently undergoing an RFP to replace the entire optical system. The new system will be FlexGrid, and it will support third-party transponders, meaning that the next generation Boreas network can adapt to new transponder technologies as they come out. So as we look to things like 100 gig client circuits and beyond, the new network will be flexible and will support those. We expect considerable power and space savings, and in addition to the improved capabilities. In the RFP, WiscNet is planning on 400 gigabits per second of capacity between core nodes. So going from the 2 by 100 gigabit per second capacity we currently have, we can either go to N by 100 gig or 1 by 400 gig, at least in the initial purchase. And this is going to get finalized this month or next month. So you can expect from WiscNet soon an update on the direction that we're going. This is a Boreas fiber path overview, and there's kind of some exciting news. WiscNet and Boreas are proposing that WiscNet's fiber path between Minneapolis, Eau Claire, Wausau, Green Bay, Sheboygan, and Milwaukee be included in the next generation Boreas network. This is shown in red on this diagram. This will bring a more capable optical network to these locations, and it will allow the underutilized fiber between these locations to be used by all Boreas members. There are a few other fiber changes I'm not going to highlight today, but overall, as we design this next generation Boreas network, we're making minor metro fiber tweaks and some redundancy tweaks just to provide a more robust service. And then also with this next generation network, OTDRs will be integrated at every single node. So when there's a fiber cut, we can determine the location of the fiber cut within minutes and open tickets with the fiber providers and have faster, hopefully, time to repair. Here's just a visual example of the existing Boreas network. In the left photo, there is a total of 1.5 racks of Boreas equipment just at one location. In the left photo, that rightmost rack with 3 doors on it is actually one chassis taking up an entire rack. Regardless of the vendor, you can expect the next generation Boreas to take up far less space and use less power. In the right photo, I'm actually installing a WiscNet specific node, that blue chassis, that's 1RU in Chicago, that's capable of 1.2 terabits per second. Moving on from Boreas, WiscNet runs Infinera optical hardware elsewhere on our network that's only used by WiscNet and Merit today. And we'll talk a little bit more about that Merit partnership later. The new system is photographed here on the right. It has ROADMs, which are reconfigurable optical add-drop multiplexers that have the capability of steer light in any fiber direction that they're connected to. They're flex grid, which means that any wavelength width can be used instead of one fixed wavelength. This just gives us flexibility as new technologies come out that use different wavelength lasers. We can support them with our new system. Just some more details on the G30s WiscNet's deploying in Wisconsin. They're modular pizza boxes, 1RU, instead of the larger chassis we had been using. They do support OTDRs remotely, and we've installed them at some locations. They have ROADMs, like I already mentioned, and they support what is often called alien waves or foreign wavelengths. So we're going to be partnering with other networks like Merit so that they can use their laser light on our system and vice versa, potentially, just so that we can integrate our systems and partner. And today, the G30 systems that we bought support 100 gig and 400 gig clients. Lots of changes since WiscNet connections. Here are the big highlights. Amazon and Google now have redundant 100 gig connections in Chicago, with half of the connections landing on a Big Ten Academic Alliance router and half landing directly on a WiscNet router. The routers in Watertown, Whitewater, and Janesville were replaced and now have 20 gigabits per second of capacity. The Milwaukee to Chicago path now has 3 100 gigabit per second circuits. WiscNet now has 200 gigabits per second of capacity between Eau Claire, Green Bay, and Milwaukee. And then the path between Superior, Ashland, Marinette, and Green Bay is now run by Merit, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Switching to talk about our core routers briefly. WiscNet defines core routers as our aggregation routers that are higher capacity and can run full BGP tables. We have about 8 of these routers. On our backbone, our transition to 2 by 100 gigabits per second circuits between all core routers is now complete, with one exception in Milwaukee, where we're going to jump probably straight to 400 gigabits per second. WiscNet is now down to 2 standards for core routers. One standard is a Juniper MX304, which is a 2RU router that has redundant REs, 2 line cards in the method that WiscNet deployed them, and has a single switch fabric card. And then the other standard is a Juniper MX480, also has redundant REs. It has redundant switch fabric cards, and it's a larger platform. Those are the main differences between the two. The MX304 is 3.2 terabits per second, and the MX480 is 2 terabits per second in the way we've deployed them. And then just in general, switching to standardizing on these 2 platforms, our price per gigabit has improved, and power and rack unit savings has improved. We're predicting no major core router changes until 2026, and we're predicting that only Chicago will need augmenting at that time. Here's just examples of the hardware we've uninstalled from our network. We no longer have any MX960s, which are 16 rack units and use a lot of electricity, and we no longer have any MPC5 or MPC7 line cards. Those were our highest per gigabit per second cost for support contracts. We've actually sold our MPC7s to recover some of that cost. And then here's a real life example of a site that went from one Juniper MX960 to one MX304. Kind of just highlights the amount of space and power we saved. 3 of its 4 power supplies are sitting there on the ground. I think the 4 power supplies combined is the size of one MX304. Here are where our core routers are placed on the network. The red circles are Juniper MX304s. The black circles are Juniper MX480s. And as you trace around those, follow the fiber paths between those routers, you can see that almost all of the links are 2 by 100 gigabits per second. In Madison, there is a single 400 gigabit per second circuit. And then in Milwaukee, that's the one location where we do not have greater than 100 gigabits per second yet. But each of those nodes is served by 200 gigabits per second in a different direction. And that's the span that will probably jump straight to 400. Here's just one more photo example of the 2 standards we have deployed now. MX480 on the bottom with 2 MPC10s and 1 MPC3, and Juniper MX304 with 2 LMIC16s. The WiscNet Merit partnership. So for those of you who don't know, Merit is the Michigan equivalent of WiscNet. Merit provides WiscNet today circuits between Superior, Marinette, and Green Bay. I have Ashland listed here with an asterisk. WiscNet currently doesn't have a router in Ashland, but Merit can support delivering circuits to WiscNet in Ashland if we see a demand from members there. WiscNet wanted to maintain this in the transition to Merit's new network. WiscNet, in exchange, provides Merit circuits from Superior to Chicago and Green Bay to Chicago. All of this support between our networks is done without exchanging money. We view this as an equitable exchange of services, and as we're both not-for-profits, this is kind of just, what we can leverage between our 2 networks. We also provide ourselves mutual out-of-band services for our routers. And we do that exchange in Chicago. So the Upper Peninsula path between Superior and Green Bay actually used to be operated by WiscNet, and now the transition to being operated by Merit is complete. And then in the future, Merit is interested in running their own laser light over WiscNet's optical system. So that's something we're looking to do in the future. So instead of WiscNet providing circuits that we support, they would just put their laser light on our optical system and we would deliver it to Chicago for them. So traffic updates. So some traffic news. I wanted to highlight our edge connectivity to other networks, and hopefully this is visible. Some recent changes. Microsoft is now on a single 100 gigabit per second NNI, or I'm sorry, PNI, and we're looking to get a second 100 gig PNI to Microsoft, but they're doing some. We're waiting on Microsoft to have some increased capacity in Chicago to support that. We're actively working on increasing our connectivity to the United IX in Chicago from 20 gigabits per second to 100 gigabits per second. And then we're also looking to increase our connectivity to Valve from 20 gigabits per second to 100 gigabits per second. And that actually might happen this afternoon, funny enough. We just got a link on that 100 gig today. Total edge connectivity, excluding caches, is about 2.6 terabits per second. Here's WiscNet member traffic by category. So 1 month of peering. So this is our edge connectivity to entities like Amazon and Microsoft. It's getting close to 300 gigabits per second. The reason why, or you may be asking, why do you have 200 gigabit per second core ring if you're doing more than 200 gigabits per second of traffic? And the reason is that a very large amount of this peering traffic stays in Metro Chicago as WiscNet delivers this traffic to Big Ten Academic Alliance partners, where we do the peering on behalf of entities like University of Minnesota and Indiana. And then the second graph is a 1 month cache view. So this is caches like Netflix that we host on our network in exchange for the traffic that they deliver. And then at the bottom is 1 month of transit. WiscNet pays GTT and Arlean for connectivity of the rest of the world that we can't make ourselves. Some new monitoring tools. WiscNet has purchased Kentic. Kentic is a monitoring service. It takes quite a lot of data feeds from our network. WiscNet on our core routers samples one in roughly 4,000 packets. So this is just capturing the header and payload information, but not the payload itself. And we send that to Kentic for analysis. They also pull our core routers for SNMP, and we provide them BGP multi-hop feeds from our core routers so that they have a pretty in-depth view of the traffic on our network. They can then take that and provide us a variety of information like BGP peers that we should be pursuing. And actually, within the last few years, they've started doing more with security. So they take a spam house threat feed and can analyze our traffic with that threat feed and do things like try to analyze, is there a botnet on your network, or is there ransomware exfiltration happening? We haven't yet taken actions with this information, but this is something we're exploring. Something else we're exploring is running Kentic agents on a couple VMs on our network, and we can do things like monitor external HTTPS destinations, get more of beyond layer 3 monitoring capabilities. Some challenges we've been facing in the last year. WiscNet has experienced several DNS water torture attacks. So these are attacks on our authoritative DNS servers. They're dictionary attacks, so think random words throughout the dictionary inserted into subdomains of real domains. We've seen attacks that get up to about 40,000 queries per second per DNS server. That's about 100 megabits per second of traffic, both v4 and v6. And we have a cache layer in front of our DNS, but if a random subdomain that's not cached is queried, it actually has to go and query the database on the disk. So it's really I/O intensive. Key takeaways, we have mitigated these attacks by utilizing the caching layer. We can do temporary reactive measures like caching all known valid subdomains of a domain. This is not great because you can't make changes, but it's much better than just allowing the attack to overwhelm disk I/O. Some other takeaways: use longer TTLs when possible. If you make a change to DNS and you have a really short TTL to support a migration, make sure to re-increase that TTL as soon as you're done. And then we have backup authoritative providers just in case, our servers are completely overwhelmed, kind of disaster recovery planning. We've heard from several research and education networks that this is happening to them as well. So it's just interesting to hear from others, and we're trying to learn from others and work together to figure out more about these water torture attacks. Other challenges, in the last year, WiscNet has seen 2 volumetric denial of service attacks that were north of 100 gigabits per second. One of these attacks was impacting beyond just the targeted member, and one was not. The difference between the two is that one of the attacks went to a member that their circuit was directly connected to a 100 gigabit per second path, and so the routers were able to absorb the traffic, and there wasn't impact to anybody other than the targeted member of the denial of service. And then the other attack was to a member circuit that went to a sub 100 gigabit per second path, and it overwhelmed those N by 10 gigabit per second routers, temporarily taking down primary aggregation path for that aggregation path. And other members that weren't a target of the attack saw impact as their traffic routed to backup paths repeatedly during the attack. We're looking to mitigate these attacks better. Few different thought processes on that, using Kentic just for better alerting and potentially BGP flow spec injection, but also doing things like creating better edge ACLs on the edge of our network, and using quality of service to try to mark things that are often DDoS, but things you can't just drop because it might also be legitimate traffic. So those are things we're exploring today. Another challenge, we've had some challenges with connectivity to Skyward. There are quite a few of issues and events over the last few months. Primarily, we've identified issues on the path between WiscNet and Skyward. Before we took any action to make changes on the path to Skyward, there were, I think, 4 or 5 ASNs in the path. In one of those ASNs, which is just a commodity provider that's neither Skyward or WiscNet, was having MTU issues. Path MTU discovery being off complicates MTU troubleshooting and MTU issues when somebody on the commodity internet is having MTU issues. We actually originally discovered this was the root cause because a member had a lower MTU on tunnel traffic, and they actually reported to us, hey, we didn't see this issue on our tunnel traffic that was fragmenting packets below 1,500 bytes, but we are seeing it where we're not tunneling traffic. So thank you to that member. That was during the first issue how we discovered that there was an MTU issue with a provider in the middle of WiscNet and IS Corp. For improving connectivity, IS Corp is working with WiscNet to connect directly in Wisconsin, which is great. Then the two of us can work directly to troubleshoot any connectivity issues without having to reach out to providers in the middle of us, which I don't know if you've ever tried to reach out to a random provider on the internet that your packets are traversing. That can be a frustrating experience. Some server updates. WiscNet now has a 100 gigabit per second NIC for our speed test servers. Max throughput that we've actually achieved is closer to 40 gigabits per second, and this is limited to the resources we're giving those VMs that host our speed testing services. Other server news, we're continuing OS migrations to a combination of Ubuntu server distributions, Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions, and Windows distributions. We have a new jump box that now has MFA on the host. So if I want to access our routers, our new preferred path is VPN in, connect to Jumpbox. Jumpbox has MFA. And we're working on tightening our access policies based around that framework. We're deploying a new switching infrastructure north of our Nutanix clusters. So Nutanix is our hypervisor infrastructure, just to be more resilient. Those clusters are in Madison and Eau Claire. And then we've deployed a new FortiAnalyzer VM for our FortiGate customers, for FortiGate members. Some tool updates. Graphs.wisnet.net will be getting an update. So we're going to have display more information about SNMP reachability of backbone routers and member CPEs on graphs.wisnet.net. So this is an example of what it may look like. And there will actually, in the current proposal, be mouse hovering as well. So this is an example where WisNet's monitoring system can reach the core router, but cannot reach the CPE. I think it's important to note that this is basically just saying, can we reach this device with SNMP, and not necessarily saying that we know it's an issue with the transport provider, like potentially Teach in this example, or could it be something else like a power issue at the member site or an ASR 920 failure in this example. And then just noting more explicitly that speedtest.wisnet.net and iperf.wisnet.net are both on that 100 gigabit per second server infrastructure now. I have some other and bonus slides. So we've completely redone our public knowledge base page on speed testing. So in additional to the HTTPS-based examples, we now have solely iPerf 3 examples where we're using, I have this listed down below, but Windows subsystem for Linux examples, Mac OS examples, and Linux examples, all three of which we actually bought a relatively affordable 10 gigabit per second USB-C to SFP plus tester from, or network card from QNAP. And we were doing some testing and just trying to come up with more affordable ways for us to be able to test 10 gigabit per second servers, circuits around the network. Some more bonus stuff we're looking at in the future. So today, WisNet has 100 gig and 400 gig connections, and none of those are running natively over a optical line system. They're all just client gray optics, as they're sometimes referred to. They're all LR4 in the O band, so this means 4 wavelengths. So in 100 gig, those are roughly 25 gigabits per second. 400 gig, they're roughly 100 gigabits per second. They're all O bands. That's roughly 1310 nanometers. And we only have 10 kilometer and 40 kilometer in production. And so they're either directly on dark fiber, a patch cable, or 1310 nanometer wide port on a MUX in order to support these connections. But in the future, we're looking at a lot of vendors that are now supplying 100 gig ZR or ZR Plus and 400 gig ZR Plus pluggables. So what that looks like is a single lambda instead of 4 by wavelengths, and support things like no longer needing dispersion compensation. We're hoping to buy pluggables that can do up to 80 kilometers unamplified. And we're hoping that they're tunable in the C band, which is roughly 1550 nanometers, And this would allow us to use all of the existing passive DWDM muxes, where today you might see 2 by 10 gigabit per second or 3 by 10 gigabit per second paths on our network. And those are all using passive DWDM muxes. So our goal is to be able to just replace the N by 10 gigabit per second pluggables with 100 gig pluggables, and then just use the same muxing infrastructure. So under 80 kilometers, we would just use pluggables with muxes, and over 80 kilometers, we're also interested in being able to plug these new 100 gig and 400 gig pluggables into our Infinera optical system to deliver circuits longer range for less cost. Those are the slides I have. We have additional Teach and Learn on Wednesday, January 15th. See, Michaela, maybe you have more details on that.
I can take this one, Josh. Thank
Ivor,
you
yeah.
for sharing the information and for your expertise. It's always great to listen to this, not just for our members, but for all those who work at WiscNet. You know, we learn some new things here as well. And at this point, we'd like to open the floor for questions. I don't see any in the chat at the moment, but feel free to unmute and ask your question if you have one. Well, not hearing anything. Now we can discuss our next meeting, which will happen on January 15th. It will be dedicated to cyber insurance, and it will have an AI segment in it as well. The topic for the conversation came from you. Several of our members actually reached out to us asking about updates. So cyber insurance, it will be. All right. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Josh, for providing us this wonderful information. And we'll see you in January.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. Yep. We'll have more questions then.
Sounds good, Mihai. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.